Hello, 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 everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, depending on what part of the world that you are residing and watching the show in. I bring you greetings from the United States in the great state of Michigan, also known as the Mitten State, and you are watching Get Into It, live chats with Kimberly Willis. And in this show, we talk about all things cancership. This is actually a cancer conversation. Did y'all know that? I hope you did. I hope you've been watching every week. But listen, I am your host, Kimberly Willis, and I'm your wellness advocate. Things that I love to do is to help bring resources and services to survivors. I do that through my books, which is Walk Through Fire. And I also have one where I have complemented with other entrepreneurs, other authors and writers. But then I don't stop there. I help style you, but I don't stop there. I also help you smell good because I got fragrances. But then I also help you with different shirts and apparels because really the message is to help encourage and inspire you. And some ways you can get in contact with me is right there at survivorscorner.net. You can follow me on Instagram at survivors_corner or on Facebook, Survivors Corner, or on YouTube, Survivors Corner, because this is where all of the platforms that we are streaming on, LinkedIn, Facebook, and on on YouTube as well. So I'm really excited today because we have a special guest. But before we bring her on, today is a really special day for me because this is year 5 for me for getting my cancer diagnosis. And some might say, okay, Kim, how are you celebrating the day that you were diagnosed with cancer? Because wouldn't that be a sad day for you? For me, I choose a positive outlet. I'm just excited that I am here with you all to be able to talk with you all, to be able to be seen. So I celebrate each and every milestone that it is. So because with it being my 5-year cancer diagnosis means that I'm about to have 5 years of being cancer free. Can I get an amen in the corner? Can I get a thank you? Just a congratulations with that. I'm really excited to be able to live life. And I know somebody else who's also been over 5 years cancer free, which is our guest today, Deidra Moody. So let's get into it. I'm going to read a little bit of her bio and then we'll go from there. Deidra Moody is the president and CEO of Remnant Cancer Support Group, LLC. She currently has a well-established support group for both men and women who have been newly diagnosed with cancer. But you know what? She also helps support all survivors. So even if you have had cancer for a while, you could be a part of that support group as well. And you know what? After being diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015, she decided to create her own support group again a year later. She found that many support groups did not allow individuals to thoroughly discuss their feelings or emotions regarding the disease. She wanted to provide a safe environment. Let me repeat that again, a safe environment for those who desire to understand their diagnosis and for them to find support with others who had been diagnosed as well. And in 2016, she decided to partner with her local church after Christ Christian Center and Henry Ford Hospital, a patient advocacy board. And she was given the opportunity to help those who were diagnosed with cancer and to inspire them to persevere through their daily challenges. And there's so much more to her story, but you know what? I'm going to give her the opportunity to share it herself. I bring to you Deidra Moody. Hello.
Hi, how are you? Congratulations on your 5-year survivorship, Kimberly. I'm so
Thank
excited
you.
for
Thank
you.
you.
It's,
Thank you
it's,
so
it's a
much.
big thing for us, So
Absolutely. All those milestones are so appreciative.
yeah.
And for me, it's a lot. This week is a lot. In a few days, I'll be celebrating 4 years without my mom to cancer, but we'll get into that a little later. We want to highlight you. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a 6-year breast cancer survivor.
Whoop,
As a
whoop.
matter of fact, in December will be my 7th year. However, I am a mother of one son who is a Harlem Globetrotter. I started Remnant Cancer Support Group during the time that I was, of course, going through the journey of cancer. So I am also an elder, a minister, and a teacher of the faith. And
Awesome.
so I work for the Department of Corrections. I work for the state of Michigan, and that's pretty much it.
Wait a
Yeah.
minute, you said the Department of Corrections. You faith, and then you got corrections. That's you on both
It
ends.
all goes together.
I love it. I do want to highlight some of our guests that our viewers that is watching right now, our roses, like we like to call them. We
Mhm.
have Miss Zell Randall. She said, Amen. Thank you for joining, sis. We also have another amazing viewer who's on right now, Emily Evans. She said, Amen. A huge congrats to 5 years. Thank you so much. And also we have Dr. Ingrid Wilson Johnson, who is also who is a recent guest as well. She says, thanking God for your 5 years of survival. Thank you all for watching. So
Amen.
let's dive in. Tell us about your testimony. How did you find out that you were diagnosed with breast cancer? And just tell us about your journey.
Um, well, interesting, Kimberly. Around the age of 18, I had a benign cyst that I found myself at the age of 18.
Mm,
And at the age of 18, I found it, and the doctors removed it. Thereafter, every year I had to have a mammogram from the age of 18 until my diagnosis. What's so amazing back in the day, we weren't, breast cancer, there's a huge survivorship now.
hmm
But back in the day, my mother used to keep one of those little, it used to be a little handy thing to show you how to check yourself for
hmm
cancer. And that's how I found the benign cyst at the age of 18. At the age of 35, it returned. It was another benign cyst. Um, Found it myself, had it removed, thought I was good. At the age of 45, taking a shower one day, found it again. And of course, my doctor reassured me. She's like, oh, it's nothing. It's probably another benign cyst. And it wasn't. It was breast
Wow.
cancer. And not only was it breast cancer, it was a stage 3. I
Mm,
was devastated because I found it in May. I had just had a mammogram January 2015
mm,
and found the benign, well, at that time I thought it was benign, but it was a tumor, uh,
hmm
cancer tumor. And I found that in May of 2015. And so there was some devastation there because
Yeah.
I was an advocate of making sure that I had my yearly mammogram,
hmm
which I had just had it in January. So I was devastated, Kimberly, because I couldn't understand, wait a minute, I just had a mammogram in January. How do you get from January stage 3 breast cancer? So I was
hmm
overwhelmed about how I found it.
Wow. That is, I'm starting to find a correlation
Mm,
because with the more guests that I'm interviewing that are breast cancer survivors, a lot of us have had cysts before having cancer. I had cysts early in my early 20s as well. So I
mm,
don't know if that's something that we got to make sure when we are advocates. I know you are a big advocate as well, and we'll talk about that just really making sure that we stay with our health. But I believe due to your diligence, your consistency and your
yeah,
diligence with really sticking with your self-care and things like that, because something just because you've had that yearly mammogram, you're done for the year. No,
yeah,
you still need to do monthly exams to
yeah,
be able to catch that. And again, sometimes mammograms don't catch it all. Sometimes you need the MRIs and or the ultrasounds to really to figure out if that's what's going on. So kudos to you for making sure that you continue that self-care to
exactly.
make sure that you're okay. Talk about self-care a little bit more because um, I think more often than not that we are not getting the self-care that we need for a few reasons. There
Mhm,
because we're busy or
mhm,
because we don't have the resources to go get it and we just say, well, it is what it is. So
yeah.
talk a little bit more about the importance of self-care.
One of the things that is important, and I talk about this a lot in my support groups, is about self-care, right?
Mhm.
One of the things I realized, even in the event that I found this tumor myself, that is self-care.
Mhm.
And self-care means that you're taking the time to find out what's going on with your body. I
Yes.
do believe as women, we neglect ourselves quite often. And I mean, it could be, something so simple as a pedicure or just spending the day doing absolutely nothing. At the time, I was an extreme workaholic, never took any days off.
Mm.
As a matter of fact, when I got sick, I had so much sick time, they were just like, don't even use your leave of, your disability, because I never took a day off.
Yeah. Wow.
If I went to doctor's appointments, it was like after 5 o'clock, those type
Mhm.
of things. But I realized something as a result of that, Kimberly, is that we as women do not take care of ourselves.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's no comparison to men, but I think because we have so many things on our radar daily that we just don't take the time. So self care is vital, and it's unfortunate. I didn't even learn self care until I got diagnosed with breast cancer.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. It's unfortunate sometimes that we are such workaholics about different things that
yep,
for those of us who have careers or families or working in faith-based churches and things like that, it's a lot that we can neglect. But one of the things that cancer will humble you and will let you know, hey, sister, hey, guy, I need you to make sure that you take care of yourself because the focus is on you at that point because you're fighting to live. So if you want to live and not die, you better take care of yourself
absolutely,
holistically too. So
absolutely.
tell us about your support group. So we were talking prior to the show, and I was like, we got to save this for the show. And you were talking about um, some of the inconsistencies about support groups
Yes,
within the Detroit surrounding area, because we're both in Michigan,
yes.
and even between the suburbs and or even in the hospital system. Explain a
Mhm.
little bit more about that.
Well, what I realized is when I was going through breast cancer, I had my initial journey at one facility, Beaumont. And at the time that I was going in 2015, they did not have an actual support group on the grounds. So
Mm,
they sent me to another facility. And I thought, at the time I was living in Oakland County. Of course, now I live in Macomb County, but at that time I was living in Oakland County, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, they're sending me from this location to a support group that is on the other side of town. Why
mhm.
isn't there something that is either closer to my home or convenient for me to get to? It was like, well, because this is the, hospital you chose, you only have these options in these
Yeah.
locations. And so I thought to myself, I'm so fortunate because I know so many people who doesn't have resources to vehicles or a car or a way to get there. I knew people who couldn't even get to their chemo treatments. These are the
Mhm.
different things that we find out as we're relating to other people at our chemo
Yeah.
treatment. I really believe God is so funny because most of the time I would feel like I was ministering to people as I was having treatment, and I was
Mm,
finding out information about me, about them via me, if that makes sense.
yeah.
And so I started the support group because not only when I went to the support group, Kimberly, there were a lot of women there who were just the devastation of the disease was one thing, but
Yeah.
then they were married. Most of these women were married women, and so the devastation of their husbands leaving them during the time
Mm,
of a diagnosis. So where they sent me, they were only able to deal with those women's issues immediately. But I
mhm.
felt like I never got my issues dealt with. And the reason why I say that is because I felt like my issues were internal. Now I'm dealing with my self esteem. Now
Yeah.
I'm dealing with other areas of my life. Now I got to tell my son. Now I got to tell my parents. I mean,
Mhm.
it hits you kind of different when you have to deal with these eternal things. I'm thinking, well, I'm not married. uh,
Mhm.
Please, somebody help me.
Yeah.
And I felt like I didn't get that assistance. And so that's why I started the support group because I wanted the people to get the internal things dealt with, self-esteem, their thinking processes, how they feel about life now. A
Yeah.
lot of us have learned that the world system, we're going to die from this thing, and that's not necessarily the truth.
Hmm. I love that you highlight the internal issues that go on because um, not all support groups are created equal. I'll say
Yeah.
that. And you have to find the one that is best for you,
Hmm.
and one that will allow you to be as transparent as possible. I think it's very important to be very transparent
Yeah.
because you're going through such an intense time. And anytime that you seek therapy or go to a support group, you have to find a provider or a group
Yes.
that will allow you to express it without judgment. That's why I repeated it twice
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
your bio because it's so important because there's things such as sexual dysfunctions that is a cause
Yeah.
from chemo or medications or
Yeah.
again the losing of a partner because
Yeah.
of physical ailments that has been
Yes.
removed or taken away, especially with breast cancer. Some
Yes.
guys really like that, and, and the thought that that is gone is devastating for them
Yes.
as well, but
Yes.
and they don't and sometimes they don't get the help that they need, and they think it's better to just leave than to stay. So just to get that holistic for not only the survivor, but the whole family is very important to do that. So kudos to you for seeing that need and fulfilling that gap that is needed. You
Mhm.
mentioned something earlier prior to the show that was news to me and very devastating that in the city of Detroit, which is one of the largest cities in Michigan, and at one point in the history lesson, I believe it used to be the state capital before they moved it over to Lansing,
Yeah.
because of all the freeways of how it goes to Detroit. But in Detroit, unfortunately, they have robust cancer systems.
Yeah.
However, they do not have a support group system that's in place. So all of those who are in the city of Detroit, unfortunately, have to be shipped off to go
Yeah.
to different suburbs. And we already know that there is a lack of resources already in the
Yeah.
city because there is a higher number of people who have lower incomes and things like that, and lack of resources. They may ride the bus. Talk a little
Mhm.
bit more about those lack of resources that is not available in the city of Detroit.
Yeah. So when I went through breast cancer, of course, I had my treatment in Royal Oak at the time. And what I did is I met a lot of individuals who were from the city of Detroit who did not have, resources. In my case, when it comes to resources as far as support groups, there were no support groups. They had places you could go and see a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
or if you wanted to go see a psychiatrist like I did. It doesn't matter. I think they kind of go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And what was so unfortunate, there was nowhere that anybody could really go to besides. I will give credit to Barbara Carmanos. I think that's a huge
Mm-hmm.
facility in the city of Detroit where people can go and have support group conversations. What I found is that there were really no other resources for support groups besides that particular facility.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is that when you have a platform, you'll find out that there's other individuals that are there. They got the same problem as
Yeah.
you. And then now people can relate. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if this happened to you, but for me, I was able to relate to people who went through the same type of journey that I went through, Kimberly.
Yes.
And it was easier for me to relate to them because now I'm trying to convince my family about my feelings, my
Mm-hmm.
emotions, and they're not really getting it, but they're providing a lot of information about what they would do if it was them and if they were in my shoes. And
Yes.
so I think the city has, I've tried to um, embark this idea of providing something in the city of Detroit in which we can have, because there's cancer patients everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, there's not a person I don't know that has not been hit with cancer, whether it was a family member, it was a friend, or employer, or employee. And so I'm thinking what's happening is that it is easier for them to just kind of send people to a therapist. And no, they are not necessarily in the city. There are therapists in the city of Detroit. But I think it's great if you can sit down and people talk about their real feelings and their real emotions, and everybody kind of comes together in the
Mm-hmm.
camaraderie, and we're helping one another. We know that this is a thing we're fighting.
Yes.
We're coming together fighting this thing. Now we got an army of people fighting this thing together. And don't get me wrong, the therapist and the psychiatrist, they work because it worked for me. Greatest thing I ever did. And I think as a whole, for our community, Kimberly, when I just think about the culture of our people, we have a hard time. Let's just tell the truth
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with mental health and
Yes.
anything that's related to like really talking about like mental health throws our culture off. And I'm not
Yes.
sure history wise, we got to go back in our history, and of course, we don't want to talk about that fine lining of you know
Yeah.
legal issues with that altogether. So sometimes even support groups can be a struggle. But I found that when people come together and they talk about it and they
Mm-hmm.
embrace it, it's amazing the people that I've met on my journey. And it's amazing that the people who have attended my support group, how now they got a camaraderie of friends
Yes.
that they've met. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's very important to have that camaraderie and to be able just to have that outlet.
Mhm.
Um, look, I have an assignment for both you and Zell, who's on here. Both of you have support groups. I think one of the
Mhm.
things that was hard for me at first when I was looking for support groups, I
Mhm.
landed on the hospitals, but it was harder to find living brave through breast cancer at first, because if you google it, it doesn't always pop it up unless you know the name already. So
Yes.
like be able to partner with the hospital and say, hey, I would like to leave my support group information available, so if you have like speak with the oncologists and things like that, so if someone needs assistance, hey, this you need to call me, because or send them my way, because then we'll be able to you know be able to assist them with that. But then also it will give the oncologist and or cancer program
Yes.
more buy-in, because then they feel like their cancer center program is really working for them versus just just shipping
And
it off somewhere. So I will say, if you can
yes.
with those hospitals, I know you've already been on the boards and things like that, if you already are doing that,
Yes.
just continue to do that, because I think that's the next thing, like someone who is finally ready to take that step, because it does take a lot
Yes.
for a minority, unfortunately, to seek mental health, because there's this stigma with getting help for whatever reason. And I
Yes.
think the more people who are open, who actually goes, and word of mouth is still very powerful, I think that it will start to break down those barriers. And with yourself and with Zell having support groups as well as others, Sister Strut and those are throughout the country who
Yes.
have support groups, will really help break down those barriers, so those individuals can get that assistance. Because I agree with you, I felt that once I was at a support group, that I finally felt heard,
Mm.
felt like I could relate to somebody
Yes.
with that.
Yes.
Absolutely. So our topic right now is about using your voice and using your platform, which is something that you do with your support group. But talk about what outside of just your support group, what made you want to be an advocate and to help other cancer survivors?
Mm, that's a very good question. So when the Lord gave me this, a vision, a mission to do this, I thought to myself, I really don't want to do this because the journey was so difficult for
Mm-hmm.
myself. How do I talk to other people about it? And so at the time, I'm a minister, I'm an elder at my local ministry, and I go to my pastors and I go, hey, this is something that I want to do. And they're like, whoa, we can't believe you want to do something like help others,
Mm-hmm.
through such a difficult journey. You would be sort of like a trailblazer because you're helping people in this type of thing that is difficult, right? And so it was one of those things where I wanted to feel the commission that the Lord had given me, for one. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other commission was I needed to have the support of those who undergirded me, my pastors
Yeah.
and so forth. And that's what they did. As a matter of fact, Remnant was birthed out of the ministry that I attend. And so for about a year and a half, 2 years, I did my support groups out of churches. And in the meantime, I sat on the board at Henry Ford Hospital. And
Mm-hmm.
then Henry Ford allowed me to do my support groups out of their facility.
Oh, look, you
So
was already doing it. Look, you was like, Kim, I did that already. Awesome.
it's okay. It's okay. It's just one of those things where, a lot of people who don't know, Henry Ford just built a huge cancer center, and
Mhm.
I was part of that project. I was one of the people who sat on the board and talked about what cancer survivors would need. Those who were newly diagnosed, what that would look like, and what was important for them to have as they, became, learning about this disease per se.
Yeah.
One of the things is that they just don't have support groups on the hospital grounds.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so they have places for individuals to go elsewhere. They
Mhm.
just don't have it necessarily on that grounds. And Henry Ford is not only not, it's just not, they're not the only hospital. It's just some facilities just don't have it there. They can send them to other places. But that's the main reason I wanted to help people, because I was a helper already. I'm an
Yes.
individual who wants to solve a problem. And I felt like that problem was cancer. Who else better to solve a problem than someone who went through it? And
Absolutely.
so I went through it, and it wasn't pretty. I had a huge following of people just loved on me. It's not, you don't really understand. I know you understand, but you don't even suspect the type of help and resources that come when people love you.
Yes.
And so when people loved me, they really loved me and made sure that every need was met to every component. My son was out of the country at the time. He was a pro athlete baller before he became a globetrotter. He was in Portugal, and so
Wow.
he played ball in Portugal. And just giving the news, Kimberly, was
Mhm.
devastating. To give the news and to get the news was two different emotions. To get the news,
Yes.
like, oh my God, Lord, why is this happening to me? Like,
Mhm.
I'm a good child.
Yes.
If you ever thought like that, I'm a good child. Like, I mean, I ain't done everything right, but
Mhm.
really, and then
Yeah.
giving that information also to my parents was even more devastating than providing it to my son. And at that time, which is really interesting, I'm hoping we could talk about this because I can go on and on forever.
Mhm.
But at the time that I got diagnosed, no one in my family had it. No one. At least family members I didn't know at the time. I was trying to reach out. I know you're familiar with that program where they do the blood testing. They're asking you questions of whether your aunt, your uncle,
Yeah,
and
your
so
genetic testing. Mhm.
no one in my family had it at the time that I was diagnosed. So that was another issue for me as well. But as I was diagnosed with breast cancer, found and then other people in my family began to get cancer.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. But
Wow.
my whole mission is to help solve a problem. And I think sometimes when we have a different mindset about what we're going through, it's easier for us to get through it, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So God was teaching me that change the way you're thinking about this thing. And it was just really me and God through the entire journey. My son was out the country. My parents had retired and moved to Florida. I got one
Wow.
sister here, and I mean, I really worked that one sister's nerves. And so I had cousins and different things like that, and my church family. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that's what I had.
So that the support groups really, really meant something to you because you needed that village to help you through that time. And of course, you had your church family to be by your side as well. So I think it's very important to make sure you surround yourself with individuals who are able to help you, especially when you don't have those moments where you're being positive. Because there's just times
Yeah.
that you just be
Oh
like,
my
all
God.
right. And you mentioned about when you're a Christian and then something bad happens to you, it almost makes you feel like you got detention or you got a suspension because it's like, all right,
Yeah.
now if I was doing this right, why did this happen to me? And I've learned over the years to say, why not?
Yeah.
Because he knew the reason why I needed to get cancer, not for me to die, but for me to be able to help others. So yes, for those who are advocates, no one wants to sign up and say, hey, I want to have cancer so that I can help other people.
No.
However, it's very is very impactful when someone can relate to someone who's already been through it.
Yes.
So for you to be able to take on this assignment to not only go through cancer, but then to reach back and to continue to reach back and to
Yes.
see those holes, those gaps that is needed to be filled, not only in the African American community or
Yes.
just those who live in a certain city or
Yes.
just those who just don't have access to support groups. You're really covering so many different areas, or even like in the Department of Corrections, there's people who get cancer there as well. I mean, you have access to so many different things to be able to um, really be able to help speak up for those who don't know how to necessarily fight for themselves. So
Yes.
kudos to you for that.
Thank
That's what
you.
voice is
Yeah.
all about. With that, we know that this month is still Mental Health Awareness Month,
Hmm.
and you mentioned about not, of course, having the support group, but dive in a little bit more about seeking a therapist and how important, or a psychiatrist, how important that it is to have those resources, those tools in your arsenal.
Hmm. I think it's extremely important. At the time that I started seeing a psychiatrist, I was really dealing with my mental. And I know as a Christian, Kimberly, I don't know if you've ever had to deal with this. People say, well, if you love God, why do you need to go see a psychiatrist? Right? This
Hmm.
is what people ask, and it's so amazing because I do believe, God is so resourceful. If I just
Yes.
start talking about the reason, the love of God,
Yes.
it's everything out here that we really need. We
Hmm.
do need these things, and He makes doctors, He makes psychiatrists, He makes therapists. And so at the time, I was thinking about the insecurity that I felt. Now,
Hmm.
I was insecure prior to the disease. Now I'm extremely insecure because I'm bald head.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now I done lost a couple of pounds, and I don't really look like the Deidra I was before. And I said this a couple of days ago on my Remnant Cancer Support Group page. I always do these little 15 minutes. I got something to say lessons,
Yes.
and someone sent me some pictures of how I looked years before
Hmm.
diagnosed. Kimberly, when I saw the pictures, I was almost overwhelmed. I literally cried. It wasn't that I looked bad. I realized I was internally in pain before I had breast cancer. Isn't that
Mm.
interesting?
Yeah, you can see it.
You're really a hot mess before you go through the thing. And so, of course, in the Word of God, it talks about it was good that I was afflicted. I didn't
Hmm.
even realize how good that it was that I was afflicted till I saw them pictures the other day. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I was a woman in turmoil. I was a woman in pain. I was overworked. I was never taking care of myself properly. On the outside, I knew how to make myself look good, right?
Hmm.
And so now I'm going through breast cancer, and all of that stuff from my past has now walked into this cancer diagnosis, because now the cancer diagnosis is bigger than my whole life at this point. I
Hmm.
can't see anything else. So now internally, I'm like feeling like, oh God, not only am I saying, where are you? But I'm like, I gotta talk this thing through, because the
Yeah.
people that are with me, they really can't understand. So let
Hmm.
me go talk to somebody. And what was so beautiful about that is now I'm talking to somebody. She wasn't diagnosed with cancer, but she allowed me to talk about every step of the way, how I felt about everything. And people don't understand. I don't care. It doesn't necessarily have to be a cancer diagnosis. But when you begin to talk about your issue,
Hmm.
there's healing there. I don't care what nobody says. It's healing there. It's the
Yes.
more I talked about it, Kimberly, the better I got. And I don't know if
Oh.
that makes sense to the viewers, and I'm hoping that it does. But the more I talked about my situation, the better I felt. The more I was okay with that. And then
Hmm.
guess what? The other things about me came up. Okay, what was I really insecure about?
Hmm.
So then I had to start dealing with those things too. And I learned a lot about myself by going to the psychiatrist. Best thing I ever could have done. And I think as I develop my support group, I do still encourage people to go see a therapist, go see a
Yeah.
psychiatrist, because you may not be able to get all of your information out at this support group meeting.
Correct.
you
Yeah,
know.
especially if
And
it's a large group.
yeah, and then if you're talking about your family, there were things I needed to discuss about my family, how my family felt. It was amazing
Mhm.
when you go on that journey. You don't think you're thinking it's all about you, but now I'm like, okay, now I'm bringing up how my mother feels. Okay, oh my God, how my dad is feeling. Oh
Mhm.
Jesus, like how my son is feeling. I mean, it's it deals with every component of your life, the cancer journey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. You know, it's funny that you mentioned the more you talk about it, the better you felt. I
yeah,
want to dive into using your voice when you are telling your story over and over again, because sometimes there is backlash by telling your story. You get some individuals who are tired of hearing your story. Okay, we know you had cancer. All right, So it's like, so
yeah,
speak to
yeah,
those who want to be open about their journey, because we know that our story is not necessarily for everyone. And if
yes,
it's not, you can move on. So,
yeah,
but
right,
because let us reach those who need to be reached.
yes,
So encourage someone who wants to be able to share their story, but they're worried about it. Are people going to look at them different? Are they are not a strong enough Christian because they are using resources such as therapists, um, or a support group, or just feeling like no, they're confronted with people who just doesn't want to hear their story anymore, and they're not in front of the right audience. So
mm,
encourage someone who really wants to continue to tell their story, but then they're having these roadblocks.
interesting. Um, I would say this. It's just like a testimony. One thing I know for sure about women, we like what? We like talking. I love talking. It depends on the moment, not all the time,
Mhm.
because I do a lot of talking. But one thing I found out is that women enjoy talking. And most
Yeah.
of the time, we're going to bring up our children for sure. Most of the time, we're going to bring up our husbands or whomever, our family or whatever. In the midst of that, we can always have a conversation about our health. Now, one
Mhm.
thing that is easy for me to talk about is weight. I'll say, that diet didn't work for me. The Lord is still working on me with this other 25 pounds. And then that's when I walk into, I realized, with my weight gain and different things, even for cancer, it talks about, you need to be smaller, you can't be
Mhm.
obese. Sometimes
Mhm.
certain diseases come up because of, how your body is orchestrated and so forth and so on. So it's easy to talk about it in that platform because I always think that women, we enjoy talking, right?
Yeah.
But for the one person who wants to get out here and let's say have a platform or to have a voice per se, I would say go where you're needed. I
Yes.
only go to places where I'm needed. In this opportunity of starting Remnant Cancer Support, I have ministered at churches. I have been to backyard barbecues where they were selling Mary Kay.
Yeah.
I've gone, I mean, you name it, I've pretty much done it. I've gone to other venues, and guess what? Women who want to be knowledgeable and want to know, like, hey, these are the signs, these are the
Mhm.
symptoms, these are the things you need to do. You need to be proactive about going to get a mammogram. Those
Mhm.
are the places that you go to and you get it done, right?
Mhm.
And then the places where people don't want to hear it, well, you might not want to hang out with me because 9 times out of 10, I'm going to talk about remnant cancer support. And, I'm going to be talking about my processes of life. It doesn't always come up. I think we have the Holy Spirit. You decide what's the best time to do a thing, right?
Yes.
But go where you're appreciated. And when you go to where you're appreciated, it's amazing. People are waiting for somebody to come their way for me and you, Kimberly, to tell a story,
Yes.
whatever our story is, and they want to be enlightened. They want to say, like, oh my God, what do you mean you made it through stage 3 breast cancer?
Mhm.
Most of the time that's the thing. Like, how did you make it? I always tell women, I continue to work my entire journey.
Mm.
I went to work every day except for the day that my chemo wasn't on. I still went to work. So, and that's another mission that I have. I would love to be able to go into whether it's big 3 companies or companies to talk about, the do's and the don'ts when people still want to come to work and they're not well and they're feeling ill, but they're still working.
Yeah.
I still went to work every day. Probably wasn't the best thing, wasn't probably the wisest, but I wasn't sick. Certain things, God allowed me to go through the journey. Everybody's journey is different. I mean, it doesn't matter. We hear five people's stories. It's going to be different than me and your story,
Correct.
Kimberly. And so I never got sick. Some people say, well, I was sick the entire journey. Well, I was never sick the entire journey. And I
It's
mean by that is regurgitating and different things like that. Was I down? Yes.
mm-hmm.
And I had the strongest chemo treatment. Did prayer work? It probably did.
Absolutely.
So but yeah, find the place, find the platform where people want to hear. Or you never know. You could go to an event, start talking about your situation, and then somebody says, "Oh, my friend Sheila need blah blah blah."
Mm-hmm.
And it's only because you opened up your mouth. Other than that, when we keep our mouth closed, can't nobody get no resources. Nobody can get
Absolutely.
the proper thing that they need.
Yes, the word of mouth again is so powerful with that. I want to share just a quick slide that was accidentally given to me. However, so like if you want to know about where you need to go for resources, this is just showing the demographics of Detroiters in particular, and this could be common in other major cities as well. That was report being in fair and or poor health. This is broken down by race. This is broken down by gender. This is also broken down by education, as well as income in the home, as well, and tenure on the job. So just some highlights: those who are making less than 10,000 a year, 34% report being in fair and or poor health. Also, those who have a high school degree, GED or lower, 29%.
Wow.
And then African Americans, I believe that says 24%. I had to lean in to get that one on there. So, like those who are advocates, go to some of your urban communities or look at some of those facts. Those who have lower incomes, those who are minorities, those who doesn't have, who hasn't furthered their education, they will definitely need to hear your story, and you will be able to give them the resources that you need with that. Thank you, Zell. She said, "This is good, ladies." And she also said that you both look so amazing and beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. All right, my roses, make sure that you continue to like, comment, and share this podcast to others because, again, with us using our voices, you could use your fingers. That's another way of using your voice to be able to give those resources, especially those who are in the Michigan area who are able to get those resources or even throughout the country. Again, on survivorscorner.net, I do have a few different resources on support groups that you're able to connect with because again, it's all about the support groups today. We're talking about that. I want to talk a little bit about your 15-minute inspirational videos. I remember catching one on Facebook, and I
Yes.
want to talk about the power of social media. So, yes, we
Mm,
have the in-person things, but there has been a time because of this thing called COVID that
yes.
has wanted to disrupt our lives, and we had
Mhm,
to learn how to do things virtual.
mhm.
And I think it was a blessing in disguise because there is sometimes more people on social media than those who would have maybe not have known of the resources again if they were just going in person. So I think it has broadened our reach to be
Yes.
able to not only reach those who reside locally or regionally where we are, but then also nationally and even internationally as
Yes.
well. The show is one. This we've had an Australian guest that was on the show. So
Wow.
talk about the power of social media and you sharing your journey on that platform.
Well, what's amazing about that, and I'm not sure you guys, the younger people are so good at social media, right? I was one of the people that just kind of had to learn along the
Mhm,
way, or I had to pay for someone to make a platform for me. So
mhm,
I did have an hour-long monthly show that I used to have when COVID first started, and then I went back to school to get my master's degree, and so I said, well, what's the best way at the time? Because we couldn't meet in groups anymore. And so I missed that. I love meeting as a group because you can kind of really see what the individual is going through. And so I decided, let me do these 15 minutes. I got something to say.
Yes.
And so what I would do is I would go on there and say, I got something to say. And everything that I had something to say was related to my cancer journey and the different things that I went through. One
Mhm.
of the things that is talked about the most when you are in support groups is your family members, caregivers. I talk to caregivers as well. And the reason
Mhm.
why I talk to caregivers, Kimberly, is because even though I was not a caregiver, but I knew what it felt like because I had to deal with my parents. So my parents were like,
Yes.
wait a minute, maybe you shouldn't do this. Or they didn't give a whole lot of opinion. They allowed me to kind of get through it. But what it did is it allowed me to see the side of the fence that they had to sit on. This is
Yes.
your daughter, you're going through this. Oh my God, this is devastating. And so then it allowed me to look at friends. Some of my friends who I thought was my friends were now have backed away. I thought they were the friends that were going to be there to fight with me, and then I found out, hold on, them not, they weren't my
It's
friends. And so,
funny.
oh my God, and I was so hurt. I think it's amazing, like the whole cancer journey just takes you through so many ups and downs. And
Yes.
then I had a son, who. Like most men, it's difficult for you to hear a situation, and then he's a young man at the time, and so one of the things that I found is that then you had family members who wouldn't tell their children. And so it was hard.
Yeah.
I had to tell my son. And so then that was another thing. And so what the platforms do is I bring up different scenarios that happen on my journey. And so it's imperative because guess what? Most of the time we won't bring these subject matters up when we go see the therapist because the therapist is asking specifics. They may
Mhm.
say, well, what you want to deal with today? And you bring that thing up. But
You say, I forgot.
yeah,
On daggone well, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you were going through it.
yes, yes. And so I found out through different processes, like, okay, this really needs to be talked about. It was hard. One of the hardest things was, and I couldn't imagine being a married a woman at the time. The Lord allowed me to be single. I've always been single, but I couldn't imagine, giving that information. Now the husband, dealing with that. Because you see so many different areas as you're going through the illness, how they're feeling. And so I'm really bringing up areas in which other people are dealing with as we are going through the journey. And so it's been a blessing. And guess what? As a result of me being on social media, I have got new clients.
Sweet.
I've met some amazing people, a couple of other people who just recently interviewed me. It's been amazing. The journey wasn't always meant to kill us. I said this last week.
Right.
It wasn't meant to kill us. It was really meant to change us. So when I talked about, the young lady giving me the picture, God really wanted to change me. Isn't it amazing you could be so anointed, so powerful, so good at what you do, and then you find out you're really not that great. But God didn't want to kill you. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
He just wanted to change you. And how I live and structure my life is not. I'm not really where I want to be. But oh my goodness, I'm definitely not that lady I was six
Listen.
years ago. 6 years ago, that lady was in turmoil before breast cancer. If you understand where I'm going.
Hmm.
And so God sometimes he'll allow a thing to happen
Yeah.
to change you. And I'll use that wording, because the saints gonna get real, if you say anything else. And he allowed it to happen. And it changed my entire life, my entire thinking process, um, everything. It's the thing I went through wasn't a curse. I'm gonna say it was a blessing.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know, we need to have a part two because um, I think that it's an important conversation to talk about cancer and Christianity,
Woo.
because sometimes um, when someone hasn't went through a thing,
Yeah.
they think that they can advise through a thing, or
Woo.
they'll use scriptures against you to think that what you're going through or how you're going through or the method that you're going through it and the way you're trying to overcome that could be
Oh,
incorrect. And really it's not. You get a lot of insight, wisdom, and discernment when you are dealt with a traumatic experience. It could be cancer, it could be death, it could be going through whatever it is. And to be able, look, my husband stopped me on this day. Cancer and Christianity sounds like a Pamela Lee. Yes, I think that is important
Yes,
because some really are not in touch. And instead of listening, God gave us
yes,
two ears for a reason. We
yes,
need to listen more and use that discernment to be able to hear what is being said and
yes.
then use scriptures to support. Sometimes it, we don't always have to throw a scripture or we don't always have to give advice.
Oh my
Sometimes we're
goodness.
just there to listen because you never arrive for one. I don't care what position that you are in the
Yes,
church. You
yes,
never arrive. You are always growing. And I think that if we go back to the basis of loving one another and treating
yes,
our neighbors like we will
yes,
want ourselves to be
yes,
treated,
yes.
that we will be more sensitive to those who are going through traumatic experience. Because again, that's another, again, that's why support groups, um, or even small groups in the church
Yes.
are needed, because you'll be able to really connect with all of that. I'm getting some yeses on there. Thank you,
Oh,
Sonia, for watching. Dr. Johnson was saying that, Zell, yes. Um,
yes.
to go back, Zell was saying that, talking to her son was one of the, or her children, I'm sorry, she has three children, was
Mhm,
the hardest thing to do. All three of her were in college at the time.
mhm.
Um, Dr. Johnson was also saying that managing your circle is so important, that you have to know who's in your corner.
Yes.
And then Emily has said that this has been amazing. Both of your stories
Oh,
are so inspiring. I thank you all for just throwing all these comments on there. And she said, Emily also said that Cancer and Christianity, yes, further podcast. So
love that.
listen, we already know we're going to have to, I say this all the time, but like we for real need to schedule another one. At
I
any of the
am,
small groups and both of our
yes,
churches, I think will be amazing to have with that,
wonderful.
because I think it is so needed to have those conversations
So needed.
with
So needed.
that. Cancer Christianity is coming to you guys real soon. Look, we're gonna have to trademark that. So
Yes, yes.
all right, so we are in the last few minutes of our show. We had a really amazing time together.
Amazing.
I really want to dive into your world about how people can contact you and just different things that's going on. So the platform is yours. Tell us what's going on with your support group or other endeavors that you're doing.
Wonderful. Currently, I am having my support groups out of the ministry that I attend, which is After Christ Christian Center, and it's in Detroit.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, I have not started the platform yet. I am still currently doing person to person on the phone meetings with individuals who are currently going through, but in the month of June, I'll be starting up those support groups, and we'll probably be doing it about twice a month on a Saturday, more than likely from 12 to 2, that type of thing. But they can contact me on Remnant Cancer Support Group page, or they can contact me on Deidra Moody Facebook page as well. I do want to say I am so excited. This has made my day, and I do agree with you that we do need to have a platform about Christianity and cancer. Uh, I can tell you stories for days, and I'm quite sure, Kimberly, you have stories as well. But that is
Mhm.
another thing that is huge for us to talk about in our community and our thought processes when it comes to faith, you know. And
Absolutely.
so I've had an amazing time. I thank you so much. I honor you on your 5 day. Please go enjoy yourself today. Please, every time it's my, my yearly, I go out, treat myself, do something wonderful.
Mhm.
Do that for yourself today. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part today.
Absolutely. So, guys, I want to make sure that you are supporting Deidra. So, make sure that you are following her on both of her channels. Make sure that you go onto Deidra Moody on Facebook, but then also her other page, Remnant Cancer Support Group. So, follow those things. You can DM her to get more information about her support groups or other endeavors. And also, you may call her at 248-269-3024. So you have those two ways. I will repeat the number again is 248-269-3024. Or you could go again on Facebook and you will see her 15-minute inspirations that she's got on there, which is on her main page, Deidra Moody. And then again, you can follow her again on Remnant Cancer Support Group. I'm excited about next week because I have a special guest,
Oh,
and
nice.
it is my husband. LT Willis will be joining us. He is also a cancer survivor as well. We are one of the rare people.
Wow.
I really don't know a lot of people who are like us, that both of us have had
Wow.
cancer and had to be the caregiver as well as the survivor at the same time.
Wow.
So
Powerful.
we're going to have a special show where we are interviewing each other. So I'm going to be in the hot seat. So hopefully you don't ask any off the wall questions, but um, it's going to be a very fun show. So make sure that you are in tune for that. But then also following, I want to let all of my roses know as well that the shirts that I had on sale last week, I am doing something a little bit different. So this week we're giving a limited number of the survivor shirts for $15. I had two different designers. So the first designer, and there's nothing wrong with either design of the shirt. This one has a little smaller font, but this is actually the one that will be $15. This one's a little bit smaller. As you see, it's not really that small, but I believe in consistency. So I want to make sure that those that are on the website are getting the ones that's with the new designer. But these ones that I'm getting rid of are $15. They are going from small all the way to 2X that I have. So if you want to get one, you can use the contact form on survivorscorner.net, or you can DM me on my social media channels that you see right there as well. So that's just for a limited time. Once they're gone, they're gone. And then you got to go on the website and remember that we donate one to a cancer organization every time that a shirt is sold for that. So I'm really excited for that. I really enjoyed having you today.
I enjoyed it as well. It was really an honor. I really appreciate you just allowing me to
Yes.
come on and tell my story. I appreciate it.
And I love that two podcasters could come together and share the same story. We have a breast cancer journey story. We
Yeah.
both were stage 3 cancer survivors, and we
Yeah.
both are advocates with that. And you can still tell your story
Yeah.
effectively and in togetherness. Sonia said, wow, awesome. You two are survivors. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for that. So make sure again that you guys tune in next week. And Deidra, stay a little bit behind the show before you head off. But
Mhm.
make sure, again, you check us out next week with my husband and I. You don't want to miss, and see what the questions that he's going to ask me and what questions I'm going to ask him. So until next week, you guys have a blessed day, and you take care. Bye.